The following is intended only for mature audiences. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. Tonight, the show might contain explicit language, and if that's something that bothers you, you might want to change the channel.
Hey folks, P. Basardo here, and you're listening to the Smoke Free Radio Network.
Not only is he my bail bondsman,
Thanks. Everybody say hello to Mr.
The actual only third way in our country right now.
I'm going to try to actually talk a little bit and maybe not get
some videos. And you know, like the ones that's a lot of the ones that really
fighting. I mean, in their mind, it's they're revolutionary, force, right? And I mean, obviously, to get rid of Stan.
It's crazy to me, and I feel like Big Tobacco's sitting there laughing. They're like, "This is
right." I don't claim to know a lot of stuff when it comes to advocacy. I don't.
They're calling this an epidemic. We're in the middle of the third wave.
Such as VSFA, such as Fig Ramsey.
Oh, wow. It's like that.
With any issue, right? Everybody has their preconceived bias, and anything you throw at them might move them a little bit, but they're going to be anchored.
This evening we have an oddity, an interview with an interviewer or a show with another show host. And I've been looking forward to doing this for a while. You've been listening to him on podcast since before even 2016. I went back, and the only thing that I could find, the earliest, I believe was in like July of 2016. And he did the Son of Liberty Radio. He still does that. But now he's moved into hosting Smoke Free Radio in its entirety, and he's brought a couple other guys along with him. So if you would, please welcome Patrick Rife. How you doing, sir?
Hola. Hello.
Hola. Hola, ¿cómo está?
It's the day after Christmas. Lots of, apparently, while I was at work today, fun stuff happened, and I'm seeing people all over Facebook and stuff, and I'm like, oh, damn, I'm glad I work because I missed out on a lot of stuff today.
You have been busy, to say the least, as you've been going along, and I've watched a progression. But I want to step back to your first podcast. When was it? Do you remember?
We did the Vaping Militia Radio for several years. And I'm actually looking up the show reel to get a date on that because it went for a long time, and I'm old and my memory's not super awesome. I know I did the Vaping Militia Radio show for probably 2 or 3 years. I think this is a funny story. The first time I met Demetrius was at an event in San Antonio in, I think, 2014. And
really?
He was mad because we were bringing the Vaping Militia Radio, but we weren't putting it on VP Live. So it would have been somewhere in 2014.
Wow.
That was a long time ago.
Oh, this was before podcasts, or right at that point in time, where podcasts were becoming, I won't say mainstream. They were gaining traction, becoming a little more popular.
There's quite a few prolific podcasters, not just in the vaping world, but I'm a big fan of Kevin Smith.
Really?
And he does like 12 different podcasts.
Are you serious?
Yes, he's got his own podcast platform, and he's got what they call Smodcast is what it is. So he was kind of like the first podcast person that I was aware of. And he gets on there and he talks about nerdy stuff because, as you can see, I'm kind of a movie nerd. I'm a comic book nerd.
Mm-hmm.
I like those things, and that's right up the Kevin Smith world alley. As well as there's political podcasts that have been around for a long time too, and people like the religious guy Bill Maher, even what's the boxy the UFC guy or the fighty guy that everybody just thinks is the greatest guy in the world, the pot smoking
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
Yep.
Joe Rogan was doing podcasts even then as well. So, they've been around. It's just that, at the time, the podcast actual platform hadn't been really hit with the vaping world yet. Even at the time, Nick Green didn't even have a podcast. He just did the YouTube thing. And, subsequent here recently in the last 2-3 years, he started a podcast. The Plumes of Hazard guys had a podcast as well. So yeah, there was some of us, and then obviously the VP Live guys.
So when you started running a podcast on Smoke Free Radio, you say you did Militia for like 7 years.
No, because I did both podcasts for about a year, and then we dissolved the Vaping Militia podcast, and then I just only had one. But I was doing a podcast every Friday night, and then one every Saturday night.
Oh, wow.
And, the Vaping Militia one would just go as long as mine does. And, sometimes we get a little bit chitty chatty and we just keep going forever, 3 or 4 hour podcasts.
Did you ever find that people would comment on the length of the show? Because I've read so many different things. It's saying, half an hour isn't enough.
If you're looking at like the algorithms and things like that, Facebook says that 4 hours is a perfect podcast length.
Oh my God!
Because when not really podcast, live stream, to get viewers because of people popping in and popping out. It'll run when you share it. It'll run on that person's share for the full length of the thing. So then the people that pop in and pop out of theirs. So there's different, people that say stuff. But I mean, initially I like to keep the podcast to about an hour. In a perfect world, it would be an hour. But then when you bring on guests, you bring on co-hosts, you bring on other personalities. Sometimes you just want to let them run and see where it goes.
Yep.
So, I mean, a lot of times, especially with Fig, because I have Fig on my show, Fig's got stuff, West Coast stuff that I don't know about, and then we brought in Kevin because Kevin does the Twitter thing and he's, super smart, and we brought him in, and then, then we bring in a guest, and then the next thing you know, and then a lot of times the viewers are in the chat room. They're like, you're not, no, keep going, drink more. And, as I don't know if people in your chat room don't know, we drink on my show. So it is often entertaining as well as educational.
And you call it drink-scussion.
Yes, the drink-scussion.
That cracks me up. For people that are listening or watching, the phone line is open tonight if you want to call in and talk to Patrick. 215-383-5752. When you hear the English lady speak, press 1. And that'll put you in the queue that I've got on the laptop over here, and we'll pipe you in and you can say, hey, or what's going on. In your early shows, and I mean way back in 2016, were you more aggressive in how you were talking about things? Were you more laid back?
Actually, when it was just me,
yeah,
and I didn't have to kiss anybody's ass. Well, at one point, I did a show called Murderers Row, and it's kind of an infamous show because I had 4 other people on the show who are all outspoken people, and we pissed off a lot of people on that show. And Demetrius and I got like a love letter from another advocacy-minded group from the West Coast who threatened us with like cease and desist letters, and stuff like that. And Demetrius is like, that's his show. That's not my show. But you know what? I stand by everything he says.
Wow. What the hell were they giving you cease and desist letters for? Because you were speaking truth?
I actually brought up something, don't want to get into the specifics, but we found out that there was an advocate who was taking money from vendors here in Texas which is my state. You don't fuck with Texas.
Right.
And telling them basically don't trust the active state group that's been fighting for vaping in the state for years, has a pretty damn good record of winning, and basically trying to use their vape fame to promote their organization and to defame another group. And that's never a good idea. I mean, I may not agree with every vape group, but if they're successful, I'm not going to fucking, allow somebody to derail their efforts. It's bullshit. No. So, yeah. But, I did a show. I think one of the first shows was about, internet experts, people that are on the internet who think that they're attorneys. And I pissed off people then too. I actually sent Demetrius a message today about the fact that I missed out on all the drama and all the stress and everything. But I noticed as soon as I go to work, it's like all the Facebook attorneys come out. All the Facebook constitutional experts.
I have seen more garbage coming around and floating around, and I can understand where people become a little bit confused because they'll read one thing here, they'll read another thing there, they read something completely unrelated saying it's the same thing in another group. And I'm like, really, folks? I mean, you can't even take enough time to respond intelligently to all the things that you read. Because if you did, you wouldn't work, you wouldn't have a life, you would die of malnutrition, that kind of thing. It's horrible.
Well, any business owner that's relying on Facebook and social media to make their business decisions probably deserves to lose their business. I always tell everybody, this is my opinion, this is what I think it means, but you probably should refer to your state leadership, to VTA, SFATA, whatever. Listen to CASA if you're a consumer. Let those people kind of guide the conversation, or at least give you guidance. Don't read a Facebook post from some schmuck who thinks that he's a compliant expert.
No.
There's a lot of those.
You were back, and again, going back into 2016, before they put the deeming regulation out that really slammed into everything. You were talking about organizations as they stood at that time, because some of the state organizations didn't even exist. And I want to say that the national organizations had one hand out to shake somebody's hand, another organization's hand, and a dagger to slit their throat.
You ever watch Game of Thrones?
Believe it or not, I have never seen a single episode.
I've never seen it either, but I've read the books, and
I haven't even done that.
It does sometimes carry that vibe. It's very political. This is all of these groups, these trade groups, and people don't quite understand that SFATA and VTA are both membership-driven trade organizations. They're not an advocacy group. Neither one of them are advocacy groups. They are they are membership-driven trade organizations. Whether you like what they do or not, and I've been to the VTA conference. I fully understand what their at the time, that was a year ago, what their strategy was. I believed in their strategy, and I still do. I support them because they've engaged with me. They've talked to me. They call me. They say, hey, what do you think about this or whatever? I've had conversations with Tony Abood that I feel like, and this has nothing to do with whether you like somebody or not, but what their plan was at the time, and the world is, everything shifts from 1 minute to the next.
Right.
You support who you support, but you do realize that their whole goal is to get members, to get them money so that they can fight for their members.
And that's one of the big ones is with VTA, and they're taking on some serious heavyweight material, and a lot of it to me seems to be things that people do not see or they don't understand, or it's in a back room trying to accomplish something. You know,
I always, when we would go to events and we would push membership into organizations for businesses, we would push CASA as the vaping militia. That's what our goal was to drive consumer membership to CASA and to drive business membership to a trade organization. And at the time when we were doing that, there were no state groups at all. And at the time, the existing national trade organization didn't have a plan for creation of membership chapters in states.
That would have to be making for a very interesting kind of thing.
Right. So at the time, there was no state groups. So when we were at one point, CASA said to us, hey, could you maybe take over the local call to actions and support us by driving people towards CASA? And we're like, sure, you know what? So two of us, me and Joe Barnett, we sort of umbrellaed the United States, divided in half, and I would come home from work at night, sit at a computer, and scour the internet for anything that had to do with vaping bans or any sort of vaping ordinances nationwide. Because there's not a single place where every local ordinance is going to be listed.
No, I don't think that's even really possible.
So we did that for several years. I wrote a call to action to every one that we could find. And obviously we had a membership at the time on the Vaping Militia Facebook group of maybe 10,000 people. Wow. And we repeatedly would say, hey guys, if you see something in your local paper, send us a link. If you hear that your city council is going to have a meeting about vaping, send us a link so we can do a call to action. And that's how the boots on the ground terminology got brought in, because that's what we had on all of our stuff, boots on the ground, because it was our members. It's a militia. These are non-professional fighters. That's what the whole idea of the vaping militia came from. So we did that. But that was in like 2012, 2013.
See, and that's going back before a lot of people really became aware of
this is not an advocate. Fighting for vaping is not a new thing. I mean, I started vaping in 2010.
Oh my God.
And, the original NJOY lawsuit, the Cetera case, was, even before that. So, I mean, it's not a new thing. It's not something, and, I see people all the time say, well, they second guess. Well, you guys have been doing this for 10 years. How comes we haven't won yet?
People don't have a good clue. And it would be so difficult to try to let people know all the nuances, all the things that happen in trying to navigate any lawsuit. It's got to be mind-boggling, even to the attorneys that are doing it. To me, I couldn't even follow all of it. But you're talking way back in, and this is right about the time that Robin Barsky came along with Vaping Militia.
Well, if you're talking about the militia group, the militia group started with 5 guys. It was the brainchild of one guy. He was a not Facebook. We were on Stickam at the time. Now, for those young people that didn't realize this, there were vaping shows on websites, and we started on one called Stickam, and we moved throughout the time, but there were networks of shows that you could go on and if you were a new guy and you needed to learn about vaping, Demetrius had a show on Stickam, bunch of guys, and this guy Fred, whose online handle was Sam I Am,
right?
And there were 3 guys: Sam, Art Barker, who was the vaping trucker, and Armando Mendez, who was Monkey Squad, was his show name or whatever. They got together and then they found two other guys. And one of them is actually in your chat room, Jim Raines and Joe Barnett. And they started doing their little thing. And then it grew and they said, well, we need to add Patrick because he's, been here. And then, let's bring in Robin too. So Robin came about a month after me. And then after that, we added two more people, and then it grew and shrunk and grew and shrunk. And then, it got huge at one point.
And it had to be, I will use the word tense and difficult, because I would assume back then people did not believe the sky was going to fall. They did not believe that the government would come in and take a sword and slash the hell out of everything. They looked at the money train and they said, good times, I got a Lambo coming. And that was it.
Well, I mean, the very first vape ban that I know of, and at the time there were indoor use bans. That was the prime ordinance that cities were trying to do, that they did indoor use bans. But a city here in Texas, Watauga, Texas, put a bill or an ordinance in place that basically said, we're putting a moratorium on vape shops. From today, there will be no more vape shops. And every vape shop that's in town, that's within the city limits, has 1 year to move. And then from that point on, there will be no vape shops. And this was in 2014, I believe.
Wow.
2014. And we wrote a blog, basically, because the way the town charter, and that's the other thing, is you have to read the town charters. You have to read how many times does an ordinance have to be read before it can be passed? Do they have to have a public hearing? All these things are all in the town charters. You have to read those. So you just can't assume that, because every city's different. Every city has in their town charter how many minutes somebody is allowed to speak, all that stuff. So anyway, the actual ordinance passed as a tie, but the only time the mayor could vote was in the case of a tie, and he was the tiebreaker. So what we did was we wrote a blog, basically calling the mayor or saying that the mayor of Watauga, Texas, was a murderer and was responsible for the deaths of every smoker in Watauga. And we sent him a copy. We tweeted it to him, or we forwarded to him an email with it. Then we got on the phone and found every vape shop that was in the city limits. There was only like two. We asked them, hey, do you know two people that are your customers that are smart enough that can go up with a list of talking points and speak properly? And they did. They went to the very next town hall meeting, got up and spoke, because there was an open period where people were allowed to speak. And in less than a week, they had reversed that ordinance.
Oh, wow. Talk about activists.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the time, that was what we did. When we found an ordinance in a place, we would get on the internet, find out if there were shops in the city or in the town, call them, say, this is what we need you to do. Can you do this? Are you willing to fight for your business? And sometimes it was like, well, dude, I gotta be at my shop.
Even then, they weren't paying attention.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
it's a shame.
And there were a lot of people saying, well, vaping's too big to fail.
Yeah, that went over real well in 2016. We got a phone call coming in, so I'm gonna reach over here. Yeah, let me see if I can actually plug this in.
You really should get a smaller tennis racket.
Bite me. Area code 250. You're on the air with Patrick on Vaping in the Mic. Who is this?
Hi, Mike. Hi, Patrick. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. Who's this?
It's Bill Darling here.
Bill.
Bill.
How you doing, sir?
Did you break it already?
I don't know if he hung up. It shows that he's still there. Bill? I have no idea what happened to Bill.
I love Bill. He's our Canadian friend.
I know. Bill's awesome.
Yeah.
Bill, if you're still in there, I'm going to disconnect you and have you call back, sir. Yeah, he dropped out. I don't know what happened.
You know,
He's one of the ones he lets me know that I know that I've got feedback on the phone lines, and I don't know why. Now, you mentioned my tennis racket. Our loving founder, Dimitri, I had a picture that he's got one just this same size, and it looks like this while he's doing his show. And it's way back when, so...
Now, when I was doing the audio only, it didn't matter. I could be over here. I could be over here. But,
Yep.
you know, since I was forced into video...
Now, see, I don't know that that's quite a fair statement.
I was forced into video.
Seriously?
I was forced into it.
All right.
Dragging tooth and nail.
So we're talking, how many years did you do?
To do the video show on the Vaping Militia, I would sit down, I would lower my chair and move the camera so only this much of I was like the home improvement guy.
I think Bill's back. Hold on one second. Let's see if we can reconnect with him here. Area code 250. Who's this?
It's Bill.
Do you know
You guys cut me off. You don't love me anymore.
The very first time I ever did a show, I had the guest on, and I'm thinking, we got enough material to cover an entire hour. We got to the bottom of the hour, and it was dead. The interview stopped, and I'm sitting here going, oh, shit, now what? This guy calls in, and he sounds like this old lady, and she was ordering a pizza, and she said, it's 30 minutes or free, right?
I don't know what you're talking about, Sonny.
And for a moment, honest to God moment, I did not know if somebody was yanking my chain or if there was a lady that was actually ordering an effing pizza. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Did you get the address and take the pizza? Come on, man. Little old lady needs a pizza.
How you doing tonight, Bill?
Doing okay. Now that Christmas 2012 is finally over and I've caught up to everything. One thing I want to bring up was back on Smoke Free Radio on one of Patrick's shows, and Patrick could probably remember this. Remember when there was so much hype for everyone getting the responses in for the flavor response to the FDA, and the numbers were going up and up and up, and everyone was so excited. And you were on your show, and I kept messaging you in chat, and I kept messaging you privately and trying to get your attention because you're on just such a great high about how many people were filling out the information, and until finally you caught on that, no, Patrick, something's wrong with these numbers. And there was something wrong with the numbers. And you went checked in on it the next day and found out, it's the ants had completely been spamming.
It was the bot attack or whatever you want to call it.
Fake responses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, everyone kept, and this is what I want people to understand, when anyone's on doing a show or advocates and everything, they get ripped to shreds because everybody the next day was going, how dare you? No, our numbers are great. How dare you even bring up that it might be something wrong with this? You're just trying to cause trouble. And I had to jump in and say, folks, I'm the one who brought it to his attention. Give me the shit for it. He didn't cause it. And guess what, though? Patrick is the one who decided, okay, maybe something is wrong, and he took the time and put the phone call in, and guess what? There was something wrong. They were hacking the site and completely nullified that entire flavor response. As a matter of fact, even today, the FDA, they have it somewhere on their website, but FDA today has never once publicly acknowledged the flavor study that Dr. Farsellino and his team submitted. But Patrick actually took the step and made the phone call to check. And everyone who gave him shit, guess what? He proved that, there was something wrong and it was against us.
Wow.
And you know, and they say that we're bots.
Yeah.
One of the bot leaders is actually in the chat room. Kevin Crowley's in the chat room. He's like bot number 3.
Well, the really sad part, though, is because of that thing, rather than going, okay, we've taken those out, we won't count them, they just said, okay, we'll nullify the whole thing, but guess what? You guys have had your response time anyhow, so we can go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
How long ago was that?
So basically, the ants got to use their hacking to nullify the positive responses that we were gaining.
Mm-hmm. That was in 2016, I think.
And that was in accordance to the FDA query.
Mm-hmm.
To the one where everybody they said
it was
anecdotes.
It was the ANPRM. It was one of the ANPRMs.
Yeah, so I just want, So I just want people to bring let Mike know, and for people to be aware, like people like Patrick who are outspoken and everything and doing these shows, they get a hell of a lot of shit, not just from the outside, but also from the people in the industry. And guess what? If I hadn't spotted those figures, and more importantly, if Patrick hadn't been the one to call and actually check with the FDA if there was something wrong there, we would have been screwed. We still might be, but
there's been a couple times where people have said, there's an outspoken vaping attorney that hates my guts because I'm not afraid to speak the truth.
Facebook attorney?
We will not speak his name.
Anyhow, I'll let you guys get back to the show, but I just want to bring that point up.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Bill. Love you, man.
Always good to hear from you.
No problem. Talk to you later. Bye now. Where's my pizza?
In the Muppets, there's like that really giant Muppet, the one really huge Muppet with the long hair. He talks like he sounds just like Bill.
Yes, and for people that don't know, Bill is like, I want to say 6'5", 6'6". The man is literally large.
I've never met him. He sounds really huge though.
And his shoe size, and I think it's Canadian size, but it's a size 19 shoe.
Holy shit.
Oh my God. It's huge. He put one on his head one night on the show, and it's just huge. It's amazing to hear somebody else recounting something that you've done that had that kind of an effect simply by a podcast. Not because you called Fox News or CNBC or CNN. You made a difference because you took an action and you did something about it.
Well, I mean, like I said, it was Bill that brought it to my attention. Then I started looking, and you're doing keyword searches in those ANPRMs, and you find out that so many of them are identical. And that's what was happening in that particular case. Was there were, I want to say, some crazy number, like several hundred, like 100,000 of the comments were identical. It ended up there were 3.
I remember that
or 3 different versions of the bot message that had been I don't know what the word is, that they did some sort of attack and just massively hit the ANPRM with so many duplicate messages.
And it forced the FDA to go in and search their database and to remove all of them.
And they said they weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
So they basically nullified the entire ANPRM, which is kind of weird because I believe, and again, if you're an attorney, you could find out, but I don't know. I mean, statutorily, they're required to put that advance notice through and allow public comment. There's nothing that says they actually have to read them and they actually have to act on them, but they can't completely erase them. I don't know. Yeah. Bill says it was over 150,000 fake messages.
That's just unreal.
50,000 of 3 different versions.
Yeah. All copied and pasted and all of that crap.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody's fighting for and with from ants groups all the time. Because they're well funded. To where the vaping industry, I think, looks like a shoestring coming along, if it weren't for people like Fig, if it weren't for people that like Naked 100 or other people that actually put a lot of money into it. I can't even name them all, but there have been some heavyweights that have brought a lot of money into this to help out.
Well, you get to a certain point, and if you're any of the big companies that have Naked 100 for like the last 3 years have just been all in on fighting for this industry. And they're looking at it. I mean, obviously they're passionate about protecting this product because of what it is and what it can potentially do. But you got to also figure, if you're in this industry and you're making a couple $1 million or multi-millions a year, it doesn't make any sense to not protect your industry. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like you have to do this if you want to make millions of dollars next year. You got to fight for it this year.
I agree, and yet unfortunately there are so many companies that are making millions of dollars that have turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to anything that says advocacy.
Well, and I don't want to take their side. I don't. But there's also been hucksters that have taken advantage over the years and have drained some of these people of money.
Well, sure.
Now, at this point now, it's kind of easy to identify who are the organizations and the people that are kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah.
They were at the table just last month in the White House, face to face with the president. You know what I'm saying?
That was a huge moment.
So, when some Jim Root or, there were a bunch of different people over the years that have showed up and said, give me money. There was a couple different guys in California. We had EVCA. We had, other people that were just there soaking the vaping industry for every dollar.
We had a congressman that everybody was rallying behind.
The vaping congressman was the one that got me in the crosshairs because I opened up both barrels because I actually did some research on the guy and came out on the show and said, Duncan Hunter is a fucking crook.
And it's true.
And here we are now. The man's been fucking convicted. He's been removed from Congress, and he's he's going to be tried as a criminal. The piece of shit threw his wife under the bus, but he's going around from vape event to vape event. If you look on my Instagram, there's a picture. Demetrius and I sat down and talked to the guy, and he's like this in the picture. So,
deer in the headlights. You mentioned,
I don't care who you are. I'm going to tell you the truth. And if you don't like it, if it hurts your feelings, the truth doesn't give a shit about what your feelings are.
And that's the way it's been on your show from the first time I ever caught one. And I was just sitting here with my headphones on going, holy shit, listen to this guy. He's ripping these people a new one. And I'm like, whoa. And I can see where you get hate mail. But before we go any further.
Surprisingly enough, I don't get emails of hate.
Really?
I don't, there's been a handful of situations where people have, posted stuff on our threads in response to one of my shows, but I don't get private messages from people saying that I'm, they're going to come and kill me or anything like that. Surprisingly enough, I have a lot of loyal people that listen to my show, that enjoy our show.
Yep.
They take it for what it is. It is us informing and entertaining because, obviously when Fig and I get drunk,
that's when things get interesting. We've got another phone call here. Let's pipe this in. This is area code 346. Tell me who you are.
Hey, Mike, it's Jim Raines. Patrick, how are you, my brother?
Hey, Jimmy. Jim is one of the founders of Vaping Militia.
Fantastic. How you doing this evening, sir?
I don't think people really realize, Mike, the work that Patrick has done for, good God, 7, 8, 9 years now. You know, we were all back in the day. We were all working, you know, 50, 60-hour-a-week jobs, you know, corporate America, etc., and then doing another 40 to 50 hours a week on Vaping Militia. And it was insane, the work that was being done back then. You know, we got up, what did we get up to, Patrick? 15,000 members?
At one point, there were 17,000 in the Facebook group.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think right now there's
so, you know, Pat,
people in there. We never
I'm
never
sorry,
got rid
say
of
that
it.
again?
I said I think right now we still got about 12,000 people in the group.
Yeah.
We still got people that are loyal.
Oh yeah, you know, I chat with Shannon every week on your show, you know, and you know, Shannon goes way back there with us, Shannon Brown.
Yep. She's one of the founders of Brave.
Yep.
And
yeah,
for those
exactly.
That don't,
Founders
that's
of Brave.
that's the Missouri Bi-State group, or was.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, the growth that we had, the way that we fought these things, Watauga was the first big win for the Vaping Militia, and we were fighting the same things back then that we're fighting today. You know, people make, and I would be willing to bet there's a lot less companies making millions of dollars than you think. You know, there's lots of companies making tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I'd be willing to bet that there's not as many companies making millions of dollars as we think.
Well, not since 2016.
Right.
I've said this before on my show, that there was a huge contraction of the industry. Lots of big players shrunk or disappeared after 2016. But that was the massive growth spurt of the industry, was between 14, 15, and 16. And it was the trajectory was almost a straight line. I mean, people just started out flipping burgers, and then 2 days later they got a juice line and they're making, you know, thousands of dollars. The next week they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's crazy.
Yep.
I mean, it was unlike anything that anybody in the business world had ever seen. I'm sure it was such a disruptive technology. That's a word that we used all the time, you know, and a lot of people may not know disruptive technology is a new technology that hits the market and makes an older successful technology obsolete. So our goal was to make tobacco cigarettes, combustible cigarettes, completely obsolete.
Obsolete.
And we were doing amazing in 14, 15, and 16.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Patrick, it's good to see you on every Friday night. I'll keep following you, and it's good to see a lot of the old names in the chat room with you. A lot of the people that we did a long time ago. I mean, I stepped away from the militia in about 2015. Just work I couldn't do it anymore. But I know Patrick and Joe and the guys kept it going. And like you said, we've still got 12,000 people in our group.
You know, the tags are still, you know, we may not be making tags anymore. I mean, not having members you know, we're not asking for members to join anymore, but every one of us are individually doing our thing and still kicking ass and taking names as much as we can.
Yeah.
Some of them are
exactly.
old. They can't kick as high.
I've still got my tag, you know, I've still got my tags hanging on my microphone, Mike. I mean, and Patrick, you know, so we take pride in those things.
Mm-hmm. I broke one of these out last week.
All right.
These are our vape bands that we had.
That's something you don't see very often.
Night.
Thanks, Jim.
And again, it is awesome to be able to hear and to let people hear what you've been doing. It's not like you just blew into town and go, hey, check this out. You've been at this for a long, long ass time.
You know, when I started vaping, I didn't have any gray hairs at all.
Right. Age has nothing to do with that.
You have the same problem as me. You must.
Oh my God.
You must have as much stress, more stress than me. Look at all that white hair.
Dude, 5 years ago, it was just lightly salt and pepper. It is now all gray. All of it. Even my beard that I'm trying to grow is
now
gray.
at Christmas time. Do people come up to you? Do the little kids come up to you and ask you for stuff for Christmas?
You know, I didn't go out in public, so I don't know this year. But come next year, they probably will.
You just let it grow out a little bit, man, and you could make a couple dollars.
It's all gray, man. It's horrible.
I'm just worried that you'll be sitting at the mall or something, and some little kid come up, sit up on your lap, and their parents freak out or something. Be careful.
You mentioned, and you said that you were forced into the video side. So you went from an audio podcast, and you used to do your show live on Spreaker, which enabled you to get... I tried to run Spreaker live the other night, and it contorted and distorted a lot of the audio, so I said, I'm not doing that anymore.
So, yeah, you got to have your settings right, and I have to wear... See, like right now, I don't have to have the big, giant earphones on.
Yep.
You have to have your earphones on, and you have to do your settings right. But nobody's complained. I skipped a couple shows doing the audio, and I got some messages on Facebook telling me that people were like, "Dude, where's your fucking show? I want to listen to it." And I'm like, "Oh, damn. Okay, so I got to do it."
See, I wear headphones all the time because I need them to hear people. You know, I've got ringing.
That's part of the age. Related.
It's the age thing. It's too many birthdays. That's what happened. We'll blame it on that. And so you were doing your podcast, and you were happy as a clam doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, there's Patrick in video.
Yeah.
And there's this other awesome guy named Fig, and another awesome guy that came later. He did a few shows without him, but then Kevin Crowley pops in. What made you change?
Okay, so here was the thing. Fig and I are like, brothers from another. We were born in the same state. Literally like in the same year or very close to each other. We both were hillbillies born in West Virginia who slowly but surely moved our ways out of West Virginia. Actually me, I moved out of West Virginia before I was 6 months old, but I was still born there. And over the years, we crossed each other on Facebook. And at one point, I was actually in California visiting my wife's family. And I was like, who do I know in California that I can break away from the family stuff? Because my wife hadn't seen her relatives in a long time and had a lot of catching up to do. And when they do that, they do it in Tagalog, which I don't understand anyway. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go hang out with a friend. I'm going to find who do I know in California that I feel like is worth, meeting.
Right.
And immediately, my mind went to Fig. I was like, oh, well, Fig's worth meeting, and Fig's in, he's pretty close. It's only an hour and a half drive from where I am. So I said, Fig, I'm coming to your store. And I, went to a store, and Fig and I spent the day. We went eating and hanging out in the shop. I gave him some money and bought some stuff, and then I went back to my family. And then, Fig started calling in the show like every week. And then eventually he was like, dude, I really like to see who I'm talking to. Let's do this, video thing so that at least I can see who I'm talking to. So then we started doing that. And we did that, even though we weren't broadcasting it on Facebook, we were still in a video chat with each other. And then we started recording some of those and then posting them separately on Facebook later.
I remember that.
Had, RJ Jerebeck did a show with us from Five Ponds. We did a big 3-hour show with Phil Basardo where we had video, but we weren't broadcasting it. And then slowly but surely, then it was just like, okay, we're here. We might as well. And then the software that we use, Zoom, actually we found out they had a go live to Facebook feature that you could do. So then it was like, well, we have to do it now. So at one point, Fig was actually broadcasting on his Facebook.
I remember that too.
And then slowly but surely we migrated to Smoke Free Radio. where people could look at my ugly face and Fig's slightly less ugly face, but he gorgeous hair,
Right.
And then, maybe 6-8 months later or whatever, we did it for a while. Then we said, well, we should have Kevin Crowley on the show. And then we had Kevin Crowley on the show. And then it was like, well, let's just keep him. He's pretty good. He fits in good. So then we brought him in, as a regular contributor and, when he's available, which is almost every Saturday night, it seems like. So, yeah, it's technically it's my show, but it's our show. I mean, it is migrated to be the three of us. And I don't want to do, literally, I would prefer not doing a show if Fig's not around because, I just love him so much. And, we feed off of each other pretty well. I know what to say to drive him insane and make him
And
go.
it happens more often than people would think. You did a show the other night with Shell Hamill.
Yeah, Shell.
And it was just, I think, for quite a while. I didn't catch all of it, but it was just you and Shell. And
yeah, because we were not going to do a show.
Right.
I said we're not going to do a show, and then Shell had to make the announcement on my show that due to some health things, she'd been diagnosed with leukemia. She was going to change her campaign. She was running for Congress in D.C., but due to the fact that she was going to have to be here at MD Anderson, which is the best cancer center in the United States, that she was going to switch her campaign to a state level campaign where she's running for Congress in Texas.
Right.
So that she can go to Austin instead of DC and she can still make her doctor's appointments and her treatments because, it's kind of important that she not die. Is what I told her.
Massively so. And I'll give her massive kudos to still put her hat in a political ring with the fact and facing what she is going to be doing medically is just huge. I mean, oh my God, that takes an iron will.
And Shell and I we have this this tempestuous relationship where we're either at each other's throats or we know we like each other, we know we care about each other, but there are certain things, like I said, Demetrius has this rule: if we agree 70% of the time, we can still work together. And there's been some things in the past that she's done that has driven me insane, and I've opened up both barrels on her on the show, and there are still things that piss me off, but you know what? We can still meet 70% of the time. So,
it's just like family.
When I made the announcement that she was going to be on the show, because I have blasted her on my show, like bad. I opened up both barrels, played video where she did the thing that pissed me off, and Fig and I blew up at it. And, when I announced that she was going to be on my show, people were like texting me, "Oh, this is going to be exciting." I'm like, no, we've already talked about it. We've, agreed to disagree, or we've made peace, or whatever it is. We're moving forward. We're not moving backwards.
And that's the important part. That
I will keep an eye on, all enemies. If somebody said something that pissed me off in the past, or I've done something and, we're at each other's throats, if we agree 70% of the time, I'll keep an eye on you. We'll work together, but I'm still going to be watching you,
We've got another phone call here. We'll pipe this through. It's area code 714. 714, you're on the air with Patrick. Tell me your first name. Who are you and where are you?
Hi, Mike. Hi, Patrick. This is Cherry.
Hey, Tammy.
How you doing this evening?
It's Cherry.
Tammy, that's what I said.
Yes, I'm doing fine. I just want to say a big thank you to Patrick, Fig, and Kevin for getting me involved in this all this advocacy stuff.
It's Cherry.
I don't know who I am.
It's Cherry Lie.
I'm letting him just kind of sit and guide this conversation.
I have a crush.
It's the one with the sledgehammer. If you don't remember, I'm going to bring that sledgehammer to Texas.
Cherry. She's saying Cherry, but we're hearing Tammy. It's Cherry Lie.
Ah.
Cherry Lie
yes, it is Cherry Lie. Yes.
most favoritist people on the planet Earth. You know, she
Thank
thanks
you.
Big Kevin and I for bringing her in, but it's her passion, it's her energy that actually prevented Fig and I from stepping away.
Really?
No, I was sitting home. Okay, I was being a carefree hermit, and thanks to you guys, and now I'm like out and about and no longer carefree.
You know, Cherry's just one of those people in the last year. She's a consumer, passionate, lovely lady from California, who went from, you know, not even knowing about advocacy to finding us on a show to now she's a rock star. She's showing up at hearings in California. She's, you know, amazing. You know, there's video of her and Jay Love in California just, you know, fighting like rock stars. You know, I'm at her feet.
I've seen all of those, and watching her taking a sledgehammer to a tire to me was like,
well,
oh
I
my
will
God.
replay the sledgehammer video as much as possible.
No,
But
I'm
she
just
has, like,
calling
8
in to
million
say
cat
hi
pictures.
and hope you guys had happy holidays.
Oh, the same to you.
Yeah, we love you, dear.
Okay, thanks.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Okay.
Oh, he'll be back.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care
Bye-bye.
now. And again, to the people that are listening, if you don't think that Patrick has been doing something to have that kind of influence, he and a couple other men brought somebody that wanted to learn and went from absolutely no knowledge to the point that she is. That's amazing and incredible. And it's also kind of humbling because it reminds us the power of speech, the power of what is being said, how it's presented. You know, it's an awesome responsibility.
I've been, you know, everybody's like, well, you know, it's just, you know, for me, I'm a very, I have an aggressive personality, I guess is the best way to say it. You know, I like having arguments. I was in the debate club. I like being the adversary. I like that. So, you know,
let me ask you a question.
For me, I enjoy what I do. If I didn't have fun doing it, I wouldn't fucking do it. I met some amazing people.
Oh yeah. So have I. How much of that aggressive personality was because you're a former veteran?
Oh, I'm not. I'm not.
Didn't you didn't you spend time?
I worked for a government agency.
Okay.
I worked for, well, not a U.S. government. I worked for the United Nations in a prior career that allowed me to travel the world and hang out with military types.
Okay.
And be in situations where people were, maybe aiming firearms at me, but it wasn't something that, I wasn't. As an adult person, as a grown up, mature adult person, I sort of kick myself in the head sometimes that I wished I had probably made that decision. But when I was a kid, I was very I didn't respect authority. And I was heavily recruited. I scored fairly well on the ASVAB and could have probably done just about anything I wanted to do. They offered me all sorts of options, other than the fact that I probably would have been kicked out.
It's funny.
Either they would have kicked me out or they would have broken me and remade me into a better citizen earlier.
The same thing with me. It is crazy. My senior year in high school, back in '86, I went and took the exam. I was going to look into the Navy. And they give you this long 4-hour exam to test everything that you think of. And I came back to the recruiter's office. He had all the paperwork. And I just wanted to be an MP. That's what I was thinking. He goes, no, we want you to go into nuclear science. And I'm like, okay, that might be kind of awesome. But then the recruiter looked at me, he goes, so in this process, after a couple of hours, he goes, so how many times have you smoked weed? And I told
None.
him, I said, I have never. He goes, oh, come on, man, you can tell me. We've all tried. I said, I have never in my life smoked weed. And as a matter of fact, I didn't start smoking until I was 19. You know, square white guy. And he goes, no, man, you can really tell me. I got to write it down so that if it ever shows up. I said, I've never done it. He goes, you've never. He goes, everybody does it. I said, listen here. If you're willing to call me a liar, then what has the rest of the service done? I got up, I ripped up all the paperwork, and I walked out. And I was thoroughly upset for years, honest to God, probably 20-some years, until it dawned on me. The man was doing his job. Was I fit, and would I make a good fit in the Navy, or was I a hothead, and I couldn't follow any direction? So I think about that recruiter all the time now, going, dude, you know, you did your job really, really well.
You fucking shot yourself in the foot.
I did, and I was so angry for 2 decades until
a nuclear scientist with the power of like turning the electricity on in millions of people's homes, or building nuclear devices or whatever. You could have been, you know,
if only I would have been able to hold my temper.
Yep.
But at that, it shows.
That word "if" means so much.
Yeah, I never would have made it through boot camp, you know, and that he was doing his job.
Now, you know, back then, I mean, that was before. I mean, my nephew just graduated from boot camp, and no, not just. It's been maybe 3 months now, but he's going through. He wanted to be an operator, and he knows that I know a bunch of people. I mean, that's one of the things that I did is I always had special forces, or, you know, special operators always with me when I was when there were 5 years that I never stepped foot on American soil. But
wow.
He knew that I knew a bunch of those guys. I mean, because they were there to protect my ass. You know, because the UN would never allow me to carry a firearm. So he wanted to go to SEER school, and he got into SEER school. And I'm like, dude, you got to realize it's not always about how fast you can run, how good you can shoot. It's, you know, they play mind games. And one of the things that he had to do was they set them in a room and had them do repetitive tasks. They were not allowed to sleep continuously. I mean, they want to see what you can do and how long you can focus on a task. And, you know, it's rough. I mean, it's not always about those things. But yes,
me up the wall.
You got to be able to follow orders. You got to be able to do what you're supposed to do, and do it without hesitation. And at the time when I was a kid, I didn't have that kind of focus. I wanted to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And, you know, I should have possibly been smarter and maybe made a different decision. But, you know, here I am. I'm 48 years old. It's too late now. I don't think they'd have me. Plus, I've had 4 knee surgeries. I don't, you know.
Yep.
I don't imagine that they would, you know, want me.
Yep. It makes it, we get older and we look back on life and we say, hey, you know, what we think we remember that we thought meant one thing now means something completely different. Yeah. Do you look back on your early days in podcasting thinking that you would do things differently, or do you look at the whole thing and say, you know, as a body of work, I'm pretty happy with what's happened?
I wouldn't change a damn thing. You know what, everything that we do, like when I did my show on Friday nights before I moved to Saturdays, my podcast on Friday night, because the way the news cycles go, a lot of shit happens Friday afternoon. And when I did my show Friday nights, I was always the first person to be able to tell people what just happened.
Right.
Because a lot of shit breaks out Friday afternoon, right before they close the doors and they run away to go home. So, you know, every show that I did was responsive to whatever happened this week and what just happened. Because there were times where I had everything planned out, because I have show notes. I have a Google Drive full of all of my show notes. And at the last minute, I would have to tear off part of the rundown. And, that's the breakdown of the show. I would have to tear down part of the rundown and go, well, I can't do this because now I got to talk about this, but this is a big deal, whatever it was. So, obviously there's been times where, like, for example, the last 2 or 3 days, before Christmas and today, we're still seeing it. We're on the precipice of Trump announcing something. So people have been talking about it for a few days, but we don't know anything. So if something's going to happen, it's going to be either Friday night or Friday right before we go to bed or right before we get off work or whatever, or Monday or Tuesday. It'll break at the beginning of the week. Nothing happens in the middle of the week ever.
No, it never does.
So my shows have always been whatever is happening at the time. I would never, I don't want to take any of it back because everything that we've done on our show has been because it was important at that moment.
And that's important.
There were times when we thought something was going to happen and an announcement was made and we've had to go, well, you know what? We said it was going to happen last week, but it didn't happen. Oh, what? It happened tomorrow,
That's something I want to talk about here in a minute. I'm going to take just a short break here, grab something to drink. Our show's running a little bit longer, but it is really interesting in things that are going on. So people don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. As you're listening to tonight's show, you are seeing right now the main people that are sponsoring Smoke Free Radio and Patrick and Vaping and the Mic are 80V Liquid. And you want to talk with John Nathan and Steven Sapir, and you want to give them a call because they've got some amazing, amazing juice. If you have a need for a shop and you need to be supplied, please see Demand Vape at demandvape.com and John Glaser. He'll get you taken care of. And lastly, the Plume Room. If you're looking for somebody to take a little bit of extra time and a little bit of extra care, see the Plume Room at theplumeroom.com.
Do you have any reason to suspect that politics and electoral politics has gone into the decision-making, people advising the president that he could lose battleground states if he banned vaping or banned flavors?
Good morning, Vape family. My name is Austin Hopper, and I am so excited to announce that the movie A Billion Lives is going to be on a new streaming service. And Erin Mills is from the New York Moms for Kiddos. She actually is so excited that she posted it on her Twitter today, clearly because she has changed her stance on flavored vapor products, and thanks to the education of the movie A Billion Lives, no longer wants to send a billion people to an early grave. Thank you, Erin Mills, and we appreciate you changing your position and understanding how helpful vapor products can be for adults. Thank you.
Hey folks, P. Basardo here, and you're listening to Vaping and the Mic with Mike Peterson.
This evening, our guest is the host of his own show, Son of Liberty, and it's almost synonymous now with Smoke Free Radio, because, again, it used to be a podcast. Now it has turned into a video podcast because you're doing the video live on Facebook and you're also doing the Spreaker Live, which is the live audio for podcast side. A couple more questions. And we were talking about just like Trump coming out and people hearing everything saying on Monday and Tuesday right before the holiday. Everybody's screaming and going, oh my God, this is going to come out. And then crickets. There was nothing. Nothing happened. And for people that are working in advocacy and the advocates, they try to tell people This was not a false front. This was something that could very much have happened. And people go, well, yeah, but it didn't. Did you ever get anybody, when you said things on your podcast, not attack you for it, but come back and say, oh, yeah, well, last week you said this and it never happened. And like you said, a week later it did. Did they ever come back and give you a bunch of raspberries for it?
No, I mean, not like that. I mean, like I said a while ago, I don't really get a lot of that kind of feedback. I mean, obviously the people that listen to my show, the people that come in and watch the show, I mean, obviously we have amazing people like Cherry Lai. We have Bill Tarling. We have, state leaders from all the different states have been on the show. They tend to listen to the show. Vape shop owners, the people that are passionate about advocacy, that know what the shit's going on and how this works, they're the ones that typically pay attention to the show. I mean, our biggest show gets like, it's not like Grim Green YouTube numbers, but I mean, we've had shows that have had over 10,000 views when you add up all the platforms. So, the people that do, I mean, obviously there's somewhere between 3 million full-time users of these products, and upwards of about 10 million full-time and part-time users of these products. There's no estimate that's respectable that is any higher than that. If we get 10,000 people listening to advocacy and getting passionate about advocacy, I'm happy with that, but no, not really. I mean, if somebody gets on and poo-poos something that I've said, it's usually because we were doing a show, and obviously it's a drink discussion, and we're adult people. We're doing an adult show. Demetrius was in the chat room, and a guy from Germany came into the chat room and was like, well, Demetrius, you should talk to these people about doing a professional show.
Why?
Because we use language that children shouldn't hear. We and I always say, hey, this is an adult show. We're having adult beverages. We're talking about adult things. Kiss your kids and put them to bed before you come and listen to my show. I love your kids. Don't get me wrong. I don't ever want to see them smoke, and I don't ever want for them to experience an early death for you as their parent. We want you to be around for the kids, but they shouldn't listen to my show.
Did you ever worry that having a drink discussion kind of show would reflect poorly on either you or part of the industry? Or do you look at it saying we're all adults and
we're all adults, and at one point we had more sponsors, and it wasn't that they dropped out. It's just that I stopped asking. I figure I know how much it costs to do the show, and everything's paid for right now. I'm not worried about sponsorship. There was one point where we said something on a show that hurt somebody's feelings, and they actually reached out to our sponsors, a couple of our sponsors, and said, you should pull your sponsorship because Patrick says things that I don't like. And our sponsor said, grow up.
That's a good answer.
Now we did a very professional show. Cherry Lai brings it up in the chat room. We had Dr. Maru Glover from New Zealand on our show.
Mm-hmm.
And when we had somebody that was a respectable scientist that, is a passionate, intelligent person, Fig and I were grown-up adult people and, respected her enough not to act like shitheels in front of her.
Right.
Now, the problem is the whole time we're acting like adult people and not using bad words, and we're not saying anything. And somebody pointed out that Fig, Kevin, and I look like three bad boys that had been drugged into church, and we're sitting in the first pew for the first time. Like we were ready to burst. And Dr. Glover started, when we brought it up that we normally are a little bit more irreverent during our show, and we were talking about bots and hashtags, and stuff like that. And he said, well, I created a hashtag this week. And we were like, oh, yeah, what was it? And she said, oh, it's bot shit. And that broke that was like the dam breaking when we realized that she actually said grown-up words, like that we were walking around on eggshells.
Adult language.
But we try to be respectful of our guests when we have them on the show. But, you know, we are indeed adult people. And on Friday night, when I'm hanging out with my brothers and I want to chill out, I'm going to have a drink or 10 or 20.
Or whatever it comes to. You see, I've wondered about that because I know the people that watch your show enjoy watching the three of you because you don't have that, hi, I've got a suit and tie and I'm a stuffy whatever.
Well, I do actually own a suit and tie, and there are pictures of me wearing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go to the state capitol, you know, I went to Austin last year to do an educational session at the state capitol. I had a suit and tie on, and when I'm in that environment, obviously I'm going to be respectful and not say you fuckers are stupid.
It's acting appropriately for what you're there to do.
I mean, obviously they're not watching my show, so when I call and I say that, you know, the politicians in Austin are shitheels, it you know, there's no ramification, there's no penalty for that. Plus, this is Texas, so they wouldn't care. But, you know, other states, the politicians do care. So we do tell people all the time, you know, when you're in that situation, you have to put on your best face.
Yep.
I mean, James Jarvis, when he goes to the state capitol in Ohio, he's wearing a suit and tie. Nick Orlando, who just showed up in the chat room. When Nick goes to the state capitol and is doing his bestest to protect the industry in Florida, he's wearing a suit and tie, and I'm sure he's not dropping F-bombs. But, you know, on my show, when I'm doing my show, the people that come to my show know that I'm going to say shit that's going to hurt people's feelings, or they're going to get fired up and go, yeah, because that's what I want. Is I want people to stand up and say, fuck yeah, I'm pissed off, and I'm gonna you know, fight for tomorrow.
And that inspired people just like Cherry. That's part of what you're doing, which is amazing. Did you find that adding the video side on Facebook and allowing people to follow along on video, did it add another dimension to your show? Did it change any fundamentals of who you are and what you do?
Well, I mean, obviously, when I was doing the podcast and it was me, and there's plenty of shows where it's just me reading news articles. You know, having a visual aid, being able to show people the article, being able to share, you know, visual stuff like, you know,
screen sharing. Right.
2 weeks ago, I had this weird thought in my head. I was like, how comes I haven't seen any anti-smoking ads on TV recently? How comes I haven't seen any anti-smoking print ads in magazines? And, you know, I just started looking, and I couldn't find a single in an image search, a single anti-smoking ad from the United States that was newer than 2 years.
It's been a while.
By date, all of the anti-smoking article, or not articles, but advertisements that I found on an image search were over 2 years old that were from America. Now, obviously, there were international health groups that had anti-smoking ads and are still continuing, you know, NHS in the UK and all these other organizations. India, you know, we did it. We showed it. We put it up on screen, and we're like, these are all the anti-smoking ads. And there's no American ones in here for like the last 2 years. The last one I saw was the one where they showed the really pretty girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then they showed her like 20 years later after she'd been smoking for 20 years and she had a trach and she looked, you know, like she only weighed about 10 pounds and she was in treatment. You know, that's the last one. And that's over 2 years old. So the visuals, as much as I blame Fig for pushing me into doing the video, it has indeed allowed us to be more dramatic with our presentation, obviously showing things that we would only been able to describe on audio.
Right. And it's a more interactive kind of platform when you get to that point. I want to say recently, but again, this is because of my age. I don't know the date. You just recently were handed the reins to Smoke Free Radio in sum total.
Yeah, I mean, really, the reins is. I mean, really, it's you and I are the rein. You know, we're the team drawing this wagon right now. Demetrius is not able to do the podcast like he wants to. He doesn't have time.
Right.
Still doing the Smoker Show, which is a YouTube thing, but when it's on, I still rebroadcast it when I can to our network. And, you know, we can always rip the audio and put the audio of the Smoker Show, but there's a lot of visual on that too. So he's still around. He still supports us. He still does what he needs to do. It's just that the day-to-day is, you know, me. And really, that's not a lot. There's not a lot of responsibility there because it's, like I said, it's just you and I right now.
It's difficult. And I know, Dimitri, anybody only has so many hours in a day to be able to devote to doing things. And at that point, you have to prioritize what do I truly need to get done and then delegate. But when you, and I listened to the show when he handed the show over and everything to you, did it feel like a responsibility? Did it have a feeling of burden to maintain a certain something?
No. I mean, because Demetrius is always, when he was in charge, he was like, you know what, you do your show, do whatever you want to do. I'm going to do my show. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. I'll support you. You support me.
Mm-hmm.
We brought you in. At one point, we had like 5 shows. We had 5 different groups or 5 different hosts, and people have dropped off, been unable to keep a schedule. They've been busy. They started new jobs or whatever. And you know what, we still have the core, you know what, as far as, you know, responsibility, as long as, you know, we're keeping people interested in what we're doing, we're educating people, we're doing what we need to do. There's no management part that needs to be done, you know.
Right.
I don't go on your show, or I don't private message you and say you can't do this on your show, you know. There's no reason for it, because we're doing our shit. We're doing our thing. We're, you know,
yep,
we're trucking along. That's all that's important.
When I first started out, I thought that I might run into a piece of controversy. I would send Dimitri a message and say, hey, I'm going to be doing this. And he goes, Mike, don't worry. You do what you want to do. It's okay.
Yeah.
And after the 3rd or 4th time, he goes, take this politely. He goes, but you're starting to piss me off. Do your show the way that you want to do it. And at that point, I learned, you know, but I was always very careful.
We only have one rule, and you know what that rule is. And as long as you don't break that rule, you're okay. You know, there's one rule, and that's it. You know, you fly your, you know, freedom bird. You know, if I leave you tomorrow,
yep. But it's
no big deal.
It's just, it's ironic. All of the growth, and I've watched it happen, and especially as you have put your show on Smoke Free Radio, how much it has grown.
Well, you know, that wasn't the show. So there was a couple of things that we did, or that I did. I came, you know, the way to grow your membership, or, you know, your impact is to get attention. So I did a series of memes with, you know, I'm a writer. I write stuff with a lot of, you know, words. And there were some pictures, and I did a picture of the head of one of the anti-groups, and she's this woman, and it was a very humorous expression on her face. And I did some research to find out who she was, and I put some factoids on there. And I did a series of those kinds of posts, informative memes.
I remember.
To get people to like the page. Because the more people that like the page when I go live, more people get the alert.
Right.
He's live. So we did that. We started, you know, and I did some math, and I figured out how many people die. You know, Fig had this thing where he says sometimes when you throw numbers at people, when you throw these big numbers at people, they're so big, they're really hard for them to digest. So we broke it down to how many people die every day. Instead of throwing out 480,000 people die every day, we broke it down to 1,300 people die every day. Instead of, 480,000 people die every year, which is a big number. It's kind of hard to imagine 500,000 people. Break it down. 1,300 people have died in the last day. And people were able to absorb that. And obviously you throw the right picture on it, and people are like, oh, that's a really cool picture that grabs my attention. I'm going to like that page. And then boom. And, at one point, I think that one picture got like 26,000 views, which is a lot of views on a picture.
Yep, a lot of sharing of that one. I remember that.
So, those things drove people to click the like button on the page, so that when we do the show live on the Facebook, they're like, oh, let me check this out. And then they watch for a few minutes. If they sat there longer, they join in the conversation. Those things, getting people to get we have to figure out ways to get people to pay attention to what we're doing, because obviously we're such a small percentage of the total number of people that use these products. Getting as much attention as possible is necessary.
And that's it. And Dimitri you and Dimitri both built a very large base group of people to even begin, and I've just watched the numbers go up. But I noticed something, because I look at the numbers for Smoke Free Radio from the podcast side, and I've noticed that they've been coming down, but at the same time, the numbers of viewers and things that are going on Facebook and other platforms going up.
Yeah.
So it's not like there has been a decline in people listening, watching, or otherwise. It's just changing balance.
Yeah. So, we would get 1,200, 1,400, 2,000 people to listen on the podcast when we were only exclusive on the podcast. And that was at the very beginning when we were first launching. We had more people listen to the early shows than the later shows.
Yep.
So then we had to develop we had to, change our plan. We had to, work on new ways to engage with people. And, the video format really did that for us. I don't put the show on YouTube because, why? Let's drive people to one place.
Create a funnel effect.
Instead of having it here and there and another place and stuff, let's have it on one place and drive people to that place. So that's what I've been trying to do.
It's been showing. It's been growing. There's no doubt about it. Did you find going from the audio to a video difficult for yourself?
Well, I started out on video. So, we were doing the little internet shows on video, and then I got away from that because, I have a face for radio. So it's better for me just to do the video. There's my wife. She came home from work. Hi, everybody. My wife's on camera. She doesn't know it, but she's on camera. And there's all of the people now. This is forever and a day. She'll be on camera. That's my loving wife. So yeah, I've already forgotten what I was talking about.
Changing from an audio format to a video format.
No, I wasn't scared of it. It's just that, I never wanted to be the face. So even back in the militia days, I was the behind the scenes guy. I was the legislative guy. I, didn't need to have my face out. So when I would go to events, people didn't even know who I was. And it's like, dude, here's my business card. I'm the legislative, director, blah, 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 blah. But, yeah, I never wanted to be the face. We had Jim. Jim is a corporate speaker. Like, he can sell, anything. He's an amazing speaker. Joe was passionate. Robin and Joe were an amazing team together. And I never, I would do shows here in Texas, but I didn't like to even travel that much. So I rarely would go out of the state of Texas to go to events. But, eventually I had to do what I had to do. But, yeah, I never enjoyed being the face, but then obviously I came out of my shell because I like to cuss a lot, and I found an opportunity to use curse words.
We're going to wrap up so that you can get together with your wife with her getting home, because we've already run way over what I normally do. In closing, what would you tell people?
Well, here we are. We're in this stage now where there's a T21, federal T21 that's been signed into law today. People are freaking out. I've talked to people. It is, as of this date or whatever, T21 is now the law of the land. But who's enforcing that? It's going to be the states that are enforcing that. It's not time to jump the gun, but it is, like I said, it's the law of the land. And I've heard people say, oh, well, state trumps federal. It's the exact opposite of that. Article 6 of the Constitution is called the Supremacy Clause. It's a preemption is what this is. This is a case of preemption. Don't freak out. Don't, call your state attorney general's office. Find out what the enforcement's going to be. Find out what's going to happen. There's no reason for us to panic. Because always, a lot of states already had T21 in place.
Mm-hmm.
It's the military exemptions that are, we're looking at here in Texas. We have a military exemption. Let's figure out what's going on before we freak out. Obviously, we're still, waiting on word if there's a federal flavor ban. The groups are going to do the work that needs to get done. Let's not panic. Let's keep fighting. There's, no reason to throw in the towel. Abood and those guys at VTA, the other guys at SFATA, the CASA is going to tell us what to do. Julie and Alex are probably doing, they're right now probably in the war room, looking at what they need to do. We're going to be here. We're not going anywhere. That's the hashtag. We're not going anywhere. We're going to fight. We're going to do what we need to do to protect this technology to save lives. And that's my only goal is to save smokers.
That's a very lofty goal and a good one to have. Everybody, you've been listening and tuning in and listening to Mr. Patrick Rife. He has his own show that he has been doing for God knows how long time. It's on what night now?
Friday night or Saturday night. No, Friday night. Friday night.
Friday night at 10 p.m.
Eastern.
And he is joined by Fig Ramsey and Kevin Crowley and from time to time different guests on his show. Patrick, thank you seriously for taking time this evening. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
You were afraid. You were afraid.
I was leery. I wouldn't say afraid, but I'll admit leery, yeah. But it's been a good hour and a half. There's no doubt. All right, everybody. For myself and for Patrick, catch Patrick tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Eastern live, Smoke Free Radio. Tune in, watch his show, catch up with him and Fig and Kevin. And until next week, I'll catch up with everybody again next week, Thursday night, 9 p.m., Vaping and the Mic. Everybody have a great weekend.
Good night. Good night.